Good morning. Thank you for joining Mobile Device Manager Plus training. My name is Induja and I'll be your trainer for today's session. This training program is scheduled for 3 weeks and we are on week 1 now. And today we will be talking about device onboarding and provisioning. Our agenda for the day is as follows. Firstly, we will have an overview of Mobile Device Manager Plus. In this section, we will discuss about the general introduction and the product's architecture and the ports required. This section would be helpful for those who are not familiar with the product already. Moving on, we will discuss the procedures to enroll mobile devices into MDM. These devices can be the new ones or those who are already in use. The next section would be to deploy the configurations on the managed devices. These configurations include the policies that are applied on the devices to make them enterprise ready and containerization or separation of corporate data from personal data on the same device. In addition to the policies for securing the corporate data on the managed devices, we will also see how to restrict unauthorized access to the corporate exchange mail accounts. Finally, we will be ending this session by discussing a list of scenarios and its corresponding solutions. Let us move on to the first topic of our day. MDM supports management of smartphones and tablets across iOS, Android, and Windows operating systems. In addition to that, we also support Mac and TV OS under Apple, Windows 10 desktops, and Surface Pro devices under Windows, and Chrome OS devices. MDM is available as an add-on with Desktop Central, which is our unified endpoint management solution. If you're looking for managing only the mobile devices, then you can opt for MDM standalone product, which is available in both on-premises and cloud versions. In case we have any MSP audiences today, we also have an MSP edition of our product, which is also available in both on-premises and cloud version. This particular edition will help you manage the devices of different clients using a single instance. When it comes to integrations, MDM can be integrated with third-party help desk applications such as Spiceworks, Zendesk, ServiceNow, Jira, and our in-house service desk application, which is ManageEngine Service Desk Plus. In addition to these help desk apps, it can also be integrated with Zoho CRM and Zoho Creator, which is our low-code application development platform. If you want to integrate MDM with any other third-party application, you can make use of our publicly available API that can be accessed by going to the link that is given below. Now let us take a look at the architecture of MDM. This architecture comprises 3 major components, which is the MDM server, notification services provided by the OEM vendors, which are Apple Push Notification Service for iOS devices, Firebase Cloud Messaging, which is for Android devices, and Windows Notification Service for Windows. And the third component is the devices that are to be managed. MDM server makes use of these notification services to wake the corresponding device, and the device in turn reaches the MDM server to receive the commands to be executed. For the devices to reach MDM server from outside the network, we need to make sure that MDM server is publicly available on the internet. And if that raises any security concern in the organization, we also have an additional component called Secure Gateway, which facilitates the communication of device to the MDM server without having to expose the server to internet. Optionally, you can also integrate your Active Directory with MDM, which facilitates easy user assignment or user authentication. Given are some of the important ports that are being used by Mobile Device Manager Plus. If you want to take a look at the whole list of ports that are being used, you can access the link that is given below. So how exactly does MDM manage the devices? When it comes to Android, MDM mobile application will get installed on the device during enrollment, and that acts as the management tool between the MDM server and the Android device. But in case of iOS, Windows, and Chrome OS devices, they already have an inbuilt device management capability. And so MDM leverages that capability to manage them. Now let us move on to our next topic for the day, which is enrollment of mobile devices. But before moving to the next slide, let me take you to the product console and explain the options that are available. So this is the MDM console, and as you see on the home page, you will have the basic details about the devices and applications that are available under MDM. Device Management tab contains the option to deploy configurations or applications to the devices that are managed. We also have options such as remote control and device compliance, etc. These policies will be discussed in detail in the next week's session. Inventory tab contains the options to configure geo-tracking, which will help you in locating the devices remotely, and you will also be able to see details about individual devices under this tab, such as the device basic information and the list of installed apps, etc. Enrollment tab is where you will be onboarding the device into MDM's management. We will be discussing the options that are available under this tab in detail in a few minutes. Reports tab lets you generate a list of predefined reports that are available, which will basically give you the details about the devices and applications that are deployed on the MDM console. Admin tab lets you configure your server settings such as the Secure Gateway server or SSL certificates, etc. And Support tab is where you will have the ways to reach our support team, such as the toll-free number and the chat options. So speaking of chat, we have our panelists available here. So if you get any queries during the session, you can always post it in the chat box. Now let us move on to the presentation. When it comes to enrollment, we generally see two different scenarios with which the organizations manage the devices. So the first scenario is the organizations purchase the device and distribute it to the end users for them to be used only for the business purposes. The second scenario is the organizations make use of the personal devices that are used by the end user and save the corporate data on the same device but separated by a work container. Firstly, we will see how to enroll a personal device, or in other words, BYOD device into MDM. So to manage a BYOD device, we have two enrollment methods. One is enrollment with invites and the next one is self-enrollment. So what exactly are the benefits of using any one of these enrollment methods? Since these are for BYOD devices, it will help you in isolating personal and corporate data on the device, and it will restrict unauthorized access, and also it will prevent the data sharing to any other third-party storage, even if the devices are owned by the end users. So we will first look into enrollment with email invites. The basic workflow is the MDM admin sends an email invite to the user with a set of instructions that need to be followed. The end user accepts the invitation by following the instructions, and this will get the device registered into MDM. Let me take you to the product console and show you how to send an enrollment invite. So here under Enrollment tab, you need to choose the platform here, and you will be posted with two options, by myself and through user invites. So let me first explain what this by myself option is. There are certain scenarios in which the organization purchases the device, but it will distribute the device to the end user for their personal use. Now in that case, even though the device is given out for personal usage, the organization would still want the device to be managed under the organization name instead of the username. So in those cases, the MDM admin would choose by myself option, which will enroll the device with the organization email ID, not with the end user's email ID, as it is mentioned here. So now our scenario is enrolling a BYOD device. So here we will be choosing through user invites option. And again, you will be given with two options, local user and domain user. You can choose the domain user if you have integrated your Active Directory with MDM. So this will help you in sending out enrollment invites to all the users in your organization's Active Directory and let them enroll their devices by themselves. If you do not want to integrate your Active Directory, then you can choose local user option and enter the username and email ID. As you see here, the domain name displayed here will be MDM, since you have not integrated your AD and this is just the MDM database. But if you choose domain user, you need to first choose your Active Directory and then choose the username. So once you choose a username, you will find the domain name displayed here, same domain name displayed here. And then when you click on send enrollment invite, the instructions will be sent to the end user via email. The instructions will look like this. That is, the user will receive an URL and a QR code along with the OTP. So the end user needs to access this URL and provide the OTP or scan this QR code for their devices to get enrolled. Now let me take you to a device and show how it works. So on the iOS device, as soon as the user scans the QR code or access the URL and enter the OTP, MDM profile will be ready to get installed, post which the end user needs to trust the certificate and then navigate to settings and install the profile. So this will complete the enrollment of BYOD device into MDM. So the important things in enrollment invite method is every enrollment invite that is sent to the users are specific, meaning every individual user will receive a different QR code and OTP. And the OTP expires within 7 days. Now, what if you are not aware of the platform of the devices that the end users are using? And what if you know that the end users are not going to access their email within the stipulated time, that is 1 week time, within which the OTP would get expired. So in those cases, you can opt for the alternate enrollment method, which is self-enrollment. So let me take you to the self-enrollment page on MDM console. Self-enrollment is the method where you will provide a common URL, enrollment URL, to the end users and use the AD credentials of the users to authenticate and get their device enrolled into MDM. So now let me access this URL and show you what happens. The machine that I'm taking this webinar session is a Windows 10 machine, and hence accessing that URL gives me the instructions to enroll a Windows device into MDM. If it is an Android device, accessing this URL will download the MDM app, and then further instructions will be posted that the end user need to follow. In case of iOS device, the MDM profile would get installed and the further instructions will be posted that the end user need to follow. So you can configure the users who are allowed to self-enroll their devices into MDM. So you can allow all the users from the AD groups, or you can choose the specific AD groups to be allowed to self-enroll their devices. You also have an option to get notified when a device is enrolled through this method. So after this is done, you can save this configuration. So this URL will be accessible to all your AD users. So we have been talking about the AD users a lot here. So we will see how to integrate your Active Directory into MDM. So under Enrollment Active Directory, you have the option to add your organization domain. You can click on Add Domain, and as you see, we do support both on-premise and Azure AD. So you can choose the one that you use in your organization and integrate it such that the AD users are fetched into MDM automatically. So what happens on an Android device when it is enrolled using self-enrollment? So the first step would be installation of MDM app, as we said earlier, because we have already mentioned that the MDM app is the management tool for an Android device. So after it is done, you need to provide the server name and port details that will be mentioned in the instructions itself. Clicking on continue, the user will have to provide the AD credentials, that is the username and password of that particular domain. And upon clicking continue, the user will have to activate the device administrator, and when the option finish is clicked upon, the enrollment would get completed. So now that we have seen how to enroll the BYOD devices into MDM, we will now move on to enrollment of new devices or corporate-owned devices. So generally, when a new device is enrolled, the initial setup needs to be done manually, and there needs to be admin or user intervention for the enrollment to get completed. But to tackle this, MDM provides automated enrollment methods such as Apple Business Manager enrollment in case of Apple devices and zero-touch enrollment in case of Android devices. So the benefits of automated enrollment would be silent app installation. That is, you will be able to install any application from MDM console to the devices without user intervention. And whitelisting apps on devices, which is basically hiding all the applications and allowing only certain applications to be available on the device home screen. And management of device OS updates. All these three policies will be discussed in detail in the next week's session. And the final and the most important point with the automated enrollment is MDM admin will have full support for all the profiles and configurations on the device, meaning every policy is available under the profiles will be applicable to a device that is enrolled using an automated enrollment method. Coming to the prerequisites for automated enrollment, the first thing would be you need to create an account with Apple for Apple Business Manager enrollment or Google for Zero Touch enrollment. And then the devices should have been purchased from the OEM vendors directly or from an authorized reseller. The workflow of automated enrollment is like this. Firstly, you will be integrating the portal with MDM server, be it Apple Business Manager portal or Zero Touch enrollment portal. After the portals are integrated, you need to add the devices to the corresponding portal. Once this is done, the device needs to be activated, and from the startup page itself, it will be enrolled into MDM. We will now move on to see how to enroll a device using Apple Business Manager. So on the MDM console, when you move on to enrollment and Apple Business Manager, you will be posted with two options. One is enroll devices for business or enroll devices for schools. So you can choose the required option, which will take you to the Apple Business Manager or Apple School Manager portal, respectively. Once you have done that, you will be posted with this option, where you will have the option to download the public key from MDM console. After you click on download, the PEM file would get downloaded here, and you can then navigate to the Apple Business Manager portal. On that portal, you need to navigate to settings, device management settings. You will have the option add MDM server over there. You need to click on it, and you will get the option to provide the name for the MDM server and upload the public key that you have downloaded. So here you need to upload the PEM file that we have downloaded earlier, and then clicking on save, you will get the option with the token to be downloaded. So clicking on download token, the server token will be downloaded, which needs to be uploaded back on the MDM console. So this basically is an exchange of token between MDM console and the Apple Business Manager portal. Once the tokens are exchanged, you can then move on to device activation settings, where you will have the option to skip the initial configurations on a device startup. If you want to skip all these configurations during the device setup and set this up later using the device settings, you can choose select all option here, and then clicking on create, the server will be added under MDM console. Or in other words, your Apple Business Manager portal is integrated with MDM console. Once this is done, the next step is to add the devices on the portal. So you need to navigate back to the ABM portal, and under the same option, that is settings, device management settings, you will have to add your customer details. That is, if the device is purchased directly from Apple, you need to enter that detail. Or if it is purchased from a reseller, that details needs to be entered. Once this is done, you will get the option to add your devices to the ABM portal with the help of the serial number. After the devices are added, you will get the confirmation that the device assignment is completed corresponding to the MDM server, and the device needs to be activated now. when the device is activated, as I mentioned earlier, from the startup page itself, it will get enrolled into MDM. So as you see here, when it is started up, it will give you the organization name, and the end user will not have any option to skip it. So when the end user continues the configuration, the device would get enrolled into MDM. So now that we have seen the Apple Business Manager enrollment, we will see how to enroll an Android device using zero-touch enrollment. So there is an additional prerequisite when it comes to zero-touch enrollment, which is not there on Apple Business Manager enrollment. That is, for you to get access to the ABM portal, you can just provide your organization details and request Apple directly. But that is not the case with zero-touch enrollment. In this case, for you to get access to the zero-touch enrollment portal, your device reseller needs to approve your account. Only then you will get access to this portal. So once you get the access, you can click on apply and enter the organization details. You can enter your name, and under EMM DPC, you can provide the ManageEngine MDM. And after your organization details are filled out, you need to enter the JSON file that is available under Zero Touch Enrollment to be added on the DPC extras column. So once this is done, you can click on apply, and the configuration will be created under Zero Touch Enrollment portal. So now that the device is added, after the configuration is done, you can activate the device, and during activation, MDM app will get automatically downloaded, and when you click on finish, the enrollment would be completed. So now we have seen the enrollment methods for BYOD devices using invite and self-enrollment, and automated methods, which are Apple Business Manager enrollment and zero-touch enrollment. We also have additional enrollment methods such as Apple Configurator, Knox enrollment method, etc. But since we do not have much time to cover all of these, we have covered only the important methods. Now we'll move on to the next section, which is provisioning the managed mobile devices. After the devices are enrolled, you will have to apply certain configurations on them for you to make it ready for your enterprise usage. So how do we do that? On the MDM console, you need to navigate to device management, and under profiles, you will have the options to configure those policies. You can always click on create profile and choose the corresponding platform and create a new one. But I have already created a profile, so I will just show you that profile policy. So clicking on continue. The first policy that is available is passcode policy. Here, you will be configuring a criteria with which the end user needs to set a passcode on the device. This is to make sure that your corporate data on the device is secured with a valid passcode. So here you will be configuring the basic number of special characters and passcode length, etc. And clicking on save, the policy will be saved. And after that is done, when the profile is associated with an MDM device, the device will be prompted to set a passcode like this. So the end user needs to set a passcode within 60 minutes, and after 60 minutes, he will be forced to set a passcode which is compliant with the criteria that you have configured earlier. And we also have options to configure restrictions such as camera restriction and screenshot restrictions. And in addition to restrictions, we also have options to deploy the configuration, such as Wi-Fi VPN. When it comes to Wi-Fi configuration, all you have to do is provide the SSID and the passcode. And once this profile is deployed, this particular Wi-Fi network will automatically get configured on the device. And the end user need not manually connect to the Wi-Fi whenever he needs to connect to it, because it will get automatically connected to the device when it comes in the range. When it comes to VPN, you can provide the configuration details, and we also have para VPN option, where you have the option to select the applications that needs to use the VPN configuration, preventing the other applications from using it. And you have the option to deploy email configuration. If at all you are using Exchange mail server in your organization, you also have the option to deploy Exchange Active Sync policy. As you see here, we do support both Exchange Online and Exchange On-premises. So all you have to do is choose the one that you require, enter the server details, and the username and the domain name would be fetched automatically using the dynamic variables based on the user details that are assigned to a particular device. And another important option is managed web domain, wherein you will be providing an URL, and whatever the data that is downloaded from this particular URL, it will be used only by the managed applications. Managed applications are the apps that are distributed from MDM console to the devices. So this makes sure that the corporate data or any data that is intended to be used only for business purposes are not being used by the user installed applications. And we also have the configuration to enable enterprise single sign-on, which will facilitate the end user to log into multiple applications by providing the AD credentials under only one application. But for this to be enabled, you need to have this Kerberos authentication enabled on your Active Directory. So you have configured all the required policies and published the profile. So the profile would get listed under the profiles list here. But how do you distribute this profile to the required device? For that, you need to navigate to groups and devices. You can deploy the policies to multiple devices using groups or to individual devices by navigating to the devices tab. In case of groups, you need to choose a required one and choose actions. Click on associate profile. All the available profiles will get listed. You need to choose the one that you require, and then clicking on select, the profile would get deployed to the device. Same goes for individual device as well. All you have to do is choose the device and associate the profile that is required. So after this is done, as I showed you earlier, the policies will be deployed on the device. Moving on, we will now see how to secure corporate data on a personal device. So data breach can generally happen in different ways. That is, it can happen between the devices using options such as Bluetooth or AirDrop. It can happen between the devices and the third-party data storage service, or else it can happen within the same device between the applications. In order to prevent this, we have the option called containerization. So containerization is basically the separation of personal data from the corporate data. In case of Android devices, an encrypted work container will get added on the Android home screen, which will contain the managed applications. So this will enable the managed applications to get stored container only, and the data sharing between the work container and the personal container will be restricted by default. So this way, you will be assured that no data is shared from an user installed application to a managed application or vice versa. But in case of iOS devices, it is a different approach. Since the iOS device is already an encrypted one, Apple will not allow an additional level of encryption to be applied. And hence, if there is a corporate file or a file that contains only the business data, when you click on it, the device will give you all the available apps that can be used to open it, be it personal or corporate applications. In order to prevent this, you can configure a policy using profiles. So you need to navigate to profiles and click on create profile. Choose the option Apple, and then clicking on continue, you will be given the list of options where you need to choose restrictions, and under security you will have shared data from managed apps to unmanaged apps and vice versa. So if you restrict this option, no data can be shared between the managed applications and unmanaged applications. So once this profile is saved, published, and deployed to a device, this is how it looks on the device. It will not show the personal applications to be available for opening a corporate file. Only the managed applications would get listed. This way, you can make sure that no user installed application is making use of your corporate data. Now that we have seen how to secure corporate data on a personal device, we will see how to secure corporate emails from unauthorized access. This can be achieved with the help of conditional exchange access. So how exactly does conditional exchange access work? Firstly, you will have to integrate your Exchange server with the MDM server. And then you will be configuring the conditional exchange access policy on the MDM console, post which MDM would act as a firewall between the devices and the corporate Exchange server and allow only the enrolled devices to access the mail account and block all the unenrolled devices. So to configure this, you need to navigate to Device Management, Conditional Exchange Access. As you see, you can configure CEA policy for both Exchange Online or Exchange On-Premise server. So you can choose the one that you require and provide the domain username and passcode. Clicking on Next, you will be able to configure the CEA policy. So you can configure the policy to be applicable to all the users who are accessing your corporate mail server, or you can configure it only for selected users. If you want to configure the policy for all the users, but you want to exclude certain people, such as the people from the top management, you can click here and enter the user details who are to be excluded. And you also have the option to provide certain days of grace period for the users rather than blocking the mail access right away. So you can choose this option and provide the number of days to be provided as grace period. As you see here, we have given 3 days as grace period. So for all these 3 days, the users who have not enrolled their devices into MDM would receive email along with the self-enrollment instructions for them to enroll their devices into MDM. At the end of the 3rd day, if the device is still not enrolled, then the mail access would get blocked for that particular user. So clicking on apply policy, the policy would get configured and MDM would be synchronizing all the mailboxes on the Exchange server and list the users who are allowed and blocked. So how exactly does this work in the backend? MDM collects the EAS identifier or Exchange Active Sync identifier from the mail client on the device when an Exchange Active Sync profile is deployed from MDM console to the device. So once that is collected and stored on the MDM database, whenever a device tries to access the corporate Exchange server, MDM matches that EAS identifier with the already stored one. Only if it matches, then MDM would allow the device to access the server, and if not, it will block the device. We have reached the final section of our session, which is the discussion of scenarios. The first scenario is, are we able to enroll the devices into Apple Business Manager if it is not purchased from an authorized reseller? Generally, Apple would restrict addition of devices into Apple Business Manager if it is not purchased from an authorized reseller. But MDM provides the way to add it to ABM with the help of Apple Configurator. So when you enroll a device using Apple Configurator, you will have the option to add the device to ABM here. You can just choose this and the device would get added. For some reasons, Apple may reject the Apple Business Manager account for some organization because the prerequisites for ABM account would be different for different organizations. So if for some reason your organization could not get an ABM account created, you can manage or supervise your iOS device using MDM with the help of Apple Configurator enrollment method, because the policies will be similar for both ABM enrollment method and the Apple Configurator method. The next scenario is, what if the organization wants to leverage the benefits of zero-touch enrollment, but the devices are not supported? In those cases, you can always use the alternate enrollment method that is available for the Android devices, which is EMM token enrollment method. So for that, you need to navigate to enrollment and EMM token enrollment page. Here, you will be posted with an on-screen instructions that you need to follow. So once these instructions are followed, the device would get enrolled into MDM. As you see here, this enrollment method is applicable to all the Android devices with OS version 6.0 and above, irrespective of the manufacturers. So during this process, all you have to do is factory reset the device and enter the DTC token that is provided on the instruction when it asks for the Google account, post which the MDM app would get downloaded and you need to choose scan QR code option to scan the QR code given here, and the device would get enrolled into MDM. The next scenario is, what happens when two contradictory profiles are applied to a device? So there are two different approaches to this scenario based on the platform of the device. When it comes to Android devices, let me just take you to the console so it will be easier for you to understand. So consider I have created a profile A with the policy, say the camera restriction is applied. That is, the camera option is restricted. And if I create a profile B with the camera option allowed, and apply both the profiles to the same device, Apple would cross-check what is the most secured policy between the two of them. According to Apple, if a policy is restricted, then it is the most secured one. So the profile A would get applied on the device since it has the camera option restricted, and the profile B would not get applied on the device. But in case of Android device, it would not check the security or the configurations on the profile. The latter one will override the former one, meaning the profile B will override all the policies that are configured on profile A. The next scenario is, how do we ensure that the users are connecting only to the Wi-Fi network that is distributed using MDM? So this can be made sure with the help of profiles as well. So under restrictions and network and roaming, you will have the option. I'm really sorry, I will open another profile now. So here, under restrictions and network and roaming, you will have the option to configure connect to Wi-Fi only if distributed via MDM. So you need to choose yes here, which will make sure that the device is not connected to any other Wi-Fi network. So when you click on yes, you will be prompted with a warning saying that a Wi-Fi profile should have been deployed beforehand, because if you set this policy to yes and distribute this policy to the device, then it would not be able to connect to any Wi-Fi network manually. So if you have not deployed a Wi-Fi profile earlier, you will not be able to deploy it after this configuration also, because without internet connectivity, whatever the commands that you execute from MDM console would not reach the device. So even then, if you distribute the Wi-Fi profile, it would not get applied. So it is always recommended to deploy the Wi-Fi profile first and then deploy the restriction profile. And the final scenario is, how do we restrict the corporate data from being displayed on the device lock screen? So this can be achieved with the help of the device restriction under security and lock screen notification preference. So this is important because on Android devices, we have the option to display the data even when the device is locked with the help of notification. So those who are not the intended receiver may also get the message while looking at the device. So you can set this to hide sensitive content or don't show notifications at all according to your requirement, which will make sure no corporate data is displayed on the notification when it is on the lock screen. So now we have come to the end of our session. Please do rate us on a scale of 1 to 5, where 5 is the best, if you have found this session helpful. And we would also like you to spread the word about our ManageEngine free training program in the social media platforms. Our next training schedule is on January 30th, and the topic is app management and device security. Thank you everyone, and have a nice day.